Hello and welcome to episode 312 of the Casual Tryhard Podcast. I'm Brian,
And I'm James.
and I don't sound good.
No, Brian's
Instead
dying.
of instead of watching the Pro Tour, I was sick. But
Yep.
we're going to talk about the Pro Tour today.
Well, I mean, you still watched it. You watched it on coverage instead of in person.
True, I could have been there in person,
Yeah.
rubbing elbows with Matt Nasty, but
Yeah.
instead, but instead, I was at home, rubbing elbows with sick child who got me sick. Outbreak monkey.
Yep. Yep. So today we're talking about the PT. We're probably going to keep this episode a little short because Brian's recovering. I don't really have anything in particular to speak on. I figure we just kind of shoot the crap and see where the episode ends.
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to us on social media and talk to us about stuff, all those links are in the description: Facebook, Discord, X, Blue Sky, email. Reach out, say hey.
Yep.
Hopefully, if you were at MagicCon, you saw Brad's big fancy sign on Sunday about Popper EDH.
Yeah, I heard about
He
it.
was he was making moves, introducing the world to Cheap Commander.
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I hope he did well. I haven't heard from you in a while, Brad. Say hey. If you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do it. The first is with our TCG player affiliate link, CasualTryHard.com/TCG. Use that link to get into TCG player and order whatever you're going to order, and you will support the show at the same time. All you have to do is use that link to get the TCG player. It's not for an item in particular. It just gets you there. So whatever Aether Drift singles you're going to pick up, or if there was a sweet PT deck that you wanted to try out at FNM, order your cards and support the show at the same time. Would really help us out. Doesn't cost you anything extra. If you want to support us more directly, you can do so at patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Patrons get early access to our show notes, so you get a sneak peek about what the show is going to be about. This week, it's kind of just a bunch of links that we're going to kind of go through a little bit, but if you wanted those links, sign up for Patreon, you can get them. Patrons also get roughly another hour of content out of us every week in the form of our unshow. We're old. Sometimes our equipment doesn't work. Sometimes we forget things. And always, we just like to catch up with each other. Living half a country apart now. So we spend about an hour before every show talking, making sure everything's recording the way it should be, making sure everything looks all right, and just kind of catching up. We record it. It's unedited, unscripted, everything. That's why we call it the unshow. And we upload it and pipe it directly into our patrons' ears. Seem to really enjoy it. So if either of those things sound good to you, or if you just want to support the show, patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Chip a couple bucks in, help the show out, get access to more of us.
Yeah, so I think what we can first start with is the person who won.
Yeah,
Right?
congratulations, right? Matt Nass?
Yeah, Matt Nass. So if you guys don't know, Matt Nass has been like around Magic for a very long time.
In a very competitive manner, been around Magic.
So I think they said he had like 8 Grand Prix top 8s and 5 wins.
Yeah.
And like there was a stretch for like a year that he like top 8'd like 4 or 5 modern GPs in a row playing KCI.
Yep.
And they had to ban the card or ban Matt Nass to make him stop winning. And so they banned the card. So he's been good for a very long time.
Yep.
Some of you may also know, you know,
I do know
sure, that he developed. He's on the team that developed Storybrooke Brawl.
Mm-hmm. He's got a new game too, I think.
Yeah, he was. I think he was playing it on stream on Monday.
Oh, was he?
He knows how to strike when the iron is hot.
Mm-hmm.
He even like got a plug-in for it. I forget what it was called.
I don't remember what it is. It's another similar game to Storybook
Auto
Brawl,
Battler.
Yeah.
Let's see here, Matt Nass, Auto Battler. I didn't mean that. What? No, that's Storybook Brawl. Storybook Brawl. Um, yeah, I guess I can't find it super, super quickly, but
Yeah, there's
uh,
nothing popping right up.
right now. But so like he's not been playing as much because like he developed one game that got taken out by whatever that guy's name was.
Crypto scam guy.
Sam Friedman.
Yep.
And so he had to develop another game, which is pretty impressive that you're just like, all right, we'll run it back.
Yep, do it again. Man, I wish I remembered what it was called.
Yeah, he mentioned it, but I cannot remember what it was called. But he's but he's been a good Magic player for a very long time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think this was his third top 8
mm-hmm.
and his first win. And he was I do not know what the games are.
Yeah. I don't see anything without some more digging that I want to do right now, so.
Yeah, but so the meta game for the weekend, that breakdown is pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he that has lost it. So you had asked me last week if I thought anything new was gonna like pop up, and I was kind of like no, and I had mentioned Esper Pixie,
mm-hmm.
but I had forgot about the Gruul aggro decks.
Yeah.
So it was Gruul Mice, Heartfire Hero into Manifold Mouse,
mm-hmm.
or other ways to target it, make it huge, and then win the game.
Yep.
That was 19% of the metagame.
Mm-hmm.
And then Esper Pixie, which is basically 1 and 2 mana removal spells that are artifacts or enchantments that you can then pick up with this town ain't big enough.
Yep.
Or Nurturing Pixie.
Yep.
Was 17% of the metagame. And then the third was Domain Overlords,
mm-hmm.
Which was 15% of the metagame. And so that was you have it's just the green and the white Overlord.
Mm-hmm.
With Leyline Binding. That's basically, there was like one deck that played Herd Migration, but for the most that saw like significant coverage. But basically that was the domain part of it, was the fact that it had Leyline Binding.
Yeah. Well, and everywhere counts as everything, so like it makes it easy.
Yes, it does make it easy. And then basically it was a control deck, kind of a classic tap out control deck, right? Sweepers and stuff. And then you play as Zur, and you animate your
Overlords.
What are they called? Thank you. You animate your Overlords early.
Yeah.
And then you just bash and gain life.
Yeah. I'm gonna break apart your little analysis there a little bit, because I would argue it's more of like a traditional mid-range deck than it is a control deck with beans.
Oh, fair.
Just from somebody
that is the other most important card.
Yeah, like I have a lot more like background playing mid-range decks than I do playing control decks, and the play patterns that I saw I didn't watch a ton of coverage, but I did watch all of day 3. I tuned in for a little bit day 2, but not a ton, just a couple feature matches. But the play patterns that I saw really reminded me of like old school mid-range decks where you're like fighting to get your engine online. Like there's certain cards that are very important that you need to make sure stick, and it seemed to play out a lot more like a traditional mid-range deck than a control deck.
Okay, fair. I think that it really mattered, like the matchup. Like
that's where a mid-range deck shines, though, is you can kind of swing either way. Like some of those, and I'm talking like old like Abzan mid-range decks, where like
Okay.
you're set up so you can play either kind of game. If you need to fill the control role, you can do that. If you need to fill the aggro role, you can do that. And you're just really versatile, but like your overall game plan kind of stays the same-ish.
Okay. So like of those 3 decks, like Gruul Mice was kind of the like pure aggressive deck.
Mm-hmm.
Then Esper Pixie was or is like a tempo deck.
Yeah.
Where like incremental advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And then Domain Overlords, mid-range, control-ish, but like eventually just goes so far over the top.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So kind of the way the rock, paper, scissors of the tournament of the top 3 decks was set up.
Absolutely. It's definitely playing the control role there.
Was Gruul was aggro, Pixie tempo, and then Domain Overlords was like the over the top control bigger deck of the 3.
Yep.
So like Esper Pixie really beat up on my Mice deck because it's just a pile of 1 and 2 mana removal spells.
Right.
That just kills all these creatures that your deck has pump spells for.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and just leaves you with a bunch of like monstrous rages and nothing to target.
Yeah.
And then Overlords just smushes Esper Pixie because a bunch of 1 and 2 mana removal spells literally do nothing against
drawing 3
Esper
cards
Pixie.
off beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Gruul Mice was kind of set up to get under the Domain Overlords decks.
Yeah.
So the Domain Overlords decks really leaned hard in addressing that. There's a lot of like, they were playing Temporary Lockdown in the main. Some of them were playing Elspeth Smite.
Yep.
Day of Judgment, Sunfall. Like they were just a ton of sweepers to try to like, wipe away all those creatures. Hope they have enough life.
Yeah.
To get to do the like Overlord Zur activate, so basically get to 5 mana and be able to gain 6 life.
Yeah. So like I hadn't had a ton of standard exposure before this PT, at least of this current standard.
Yeah.
I knew there was an Overlord's deck around, but I guess I didn't realize that Zur was a part of it. Was that new tech for this tournament, or had that been like established prior?
So I'm not sure. There was a Pioneers Overlord deck that played like 2 or 3 Zurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been playing that for a bit, like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So like Zur plus Overlords was kind of like a known thing. I think the previous Overlord decks were more like the old Domain decks.
Mm-hmm.
They were like almost more rampish.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen like Zur plus like the full-on 4 Zur.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking is because that seems like the perfect tech for the Mice matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Like you Zur and then it like instantly stabilizes you. And so I wasn't sure if that was tech for this tournament or if that was like established in the archetype already.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. I know it had been floating around, but I don't know if getting to the full like 4. But usually, and this isn't how it used to be, right? Like if a deck is 19% of the metagame, it's not that like 6 different teams came up with like a very similar like list. It's existed for a while.
Yeah.
And they all have like 45 of the same 60 cards.
Yeah.
And they like tweaked around the edges, like it probably was around. Now, after that, next up was Jeskai Oculus, which I think there were like 2 or 3 different like main builds. So Team CFB played a version of Jeskai Oculus. that was, as Jim Davis described it, they put like 3 decks together. So it was like, it had some like nowhere to run synergies with Storm Chaser's talent.
Yeah.
It had the like oh gosh, um, the Azorius Oculus bill cards in it, and there was another deck that they kind of like smushed together into one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there was some of the Japanese teams. Is it Kenta? What's his name? Kenta. Who made the finals?
Let's see.
Kenta Harane. Like I think his team had like a slightly different like build
Mm-hmm.
of it. But CFB was 6 of those 21 decks were kind of this like mush. Amalgamation of decks. So Jeskai Oculus was a combination of it was like the powerful starts of blue white Oculus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you're like on turn 2.
Yeah, you just combo somebody out.
But you also had these red cards, Inti,
Fear of Missing Out.
Fear of Missing Out, that allowed you to not just straight lose to Graveyard Hate.
Yeah.
So it gave the deck a little bit more staying power, but you still had the like, turn 2 discard my Oculus, turn 3 reanimate it.
Yeah.
As a way out. And then like the only other deck I think I saw on coverage, I guess there was like one Dimir Bounce person that I saw.
Well, one thing I was just looking for and I couldn't find it, but did you see the chart with the win rates?
I did not.
So, like Overlords, I think had a 55 or 56% win rate.
Mm-hmm.
And that Dimir mid range had like the worst win rate of the tournament. It was like 22%.
Amazing.
Yeah. And like that's kind of incredible for a deck that like it wasn't just like a one of, you know what I mean? Like a deck that a whole bunch of people decided to register and sleeve up for a major tournament only had a 20% win rate. Like that's kind of crazy.
So I have Frank Karsten's thing. So best win rate in the tournament was Orzhov Pixie.
Oh.
Piloted by Ben Stark.
Okay.
Only person in the tournament. He was 8-1 with it.
Yeah.
But your Dimir mid-range went 14-40.
Yeah.
For a 26% win rate. Yeah, and then there was just like someone who was good at limited was like Simic Merfolk. I'm gonna go 2-8, baby. But hey, and then like a couple like but it's like that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
To like play that deck and it just get like
annihilated.
Smashed.
Yeah.
Was it like one team?
I'm not sure.
Like 9 players. It could have been like one team, but
could be just made a bad call, I guess.
But yeah, that's rough. And then the only other deck I saw like significant coverage of was Selesnya Cage.
Yeah, that deck seemed kind of interesting. Because I didn't watch a ton of day 2 coverage, I only really watched day 3 coverage. I didn't see any of it.
Like the Bright Glass Gearhawk just letting you get like 2 things.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, I guess I'll get the Deskros Reliquary, the like
removal spell.
And I'll get a Haywire Mite. And then you just always had like cards in hand and like had the specific answers.
Yeah.
And then you also occasionally just got the Cage into one for free.
Yep.
So it seemed really powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know what its win rate was. Let me look here. Frank knows. Uh, the better one, where's it at here? I'm talking it up, and it only had a 45% win rate.
Yeah.
But then there was Bant Cage.
Okay.
Same basic concept, but with Mockingbird.
Okay.
So you Gear Hulk for Mockingbird,
Mm-hmm.
and then next turn you Mockingbird your Gear Hulk.
Yeah.
Now your Gear Hulk, you have a flying Gear Hulk that gets you another Mockingbird
Mm-hmm.
and something. So you can like Mockingbird plus answer.
Yeah.
Play your Mockingbird, Mockingbird plus answer.
Yeah.
And you just keep chaining them together. Now, even the guy playing it was like, my mana base, like mid round was like, my mana base is awful. But it was pretty neat to see like that. Trying to it went 18 and 12. It wasn't a huge sample, but like
Mm-hmm.
a reasonable number of people. Um, and then Teamer Otters went 8 and 2, and then the Azorius Control won 67% of its matches, and it had like 54 matches.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna say that Teamer mid range was really far off, Azorius Control was pretty close.
Yeah.
Right, I'm sure it had kind of the same, a similar matchup spread to Demir, not to Demir, to Esper Pixie, where like it was probably great against Esper Bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Struggled with like the aggressive matchups and probably like did really well against uh the Overlords deck. Let me look here. What was it against Overlords? So it was 7-2 against Gruul Mice, 7-6 against Pixie, 3-4 against Domain Overlords. Like I always feel like control decks do really well against decks that are just like I have to tap out for a 4-drop.
Yeah.
Or like I have to tap out for, I've got to resolve this creature so the rest of my cards work.
Yeah, like Overlords is kind of unique though because their big threats come in and give you value early and like
Yeah, you
before
can
you
sneak
can
them
enter
in.
and then they're like protected until like they're a threat. Like you can't wrath them away.
Yeah,
So, I don't know, that it's a unique deck.
it is. So like we were saying, Domain Overlords was 40% against Cruel Mice,
Yeah.
and then 65% against Esper Pixie.
Yeah.
And then where is Gruul Mice was 43% against Pixie.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of how and then Esper Pixie was uh 35% against Overlords.
Okay.
So just that kind of like rock, paper, scissors situation. Um, so you want to talk about the top 8?
Sure.
So the top 8, real quick, I will say that watching coverage,
Mhm.
I haven't watched a ton of coverage in a while. I've like checked in and out. They did a really good job of like, they always had like a live match
Mhm.
that like went directly into a recorded match.
Okay.
And sometimes they would like jump into like, hey, we can catch the last game of this like third of this other match.
Yeah.
Right? If their backup match went faster than they thought. So like there was always a lot of magic. It wasn't a ton of downtime.
Well, that's good because that was like traditionally that had been a problem with Wizards coverage is there was just like so much downtime.
And they like, though I refuse to ever subscribe to the Magic channel because like why should I?
Yeah.
The commercials were always kind of like,
Yeah.
hey, we're gonna go for our like 2-minute like break.
Mm.
watch commercials about how Subarus are better than any other car, and then come back with like 30 seconds left in the
Yeah.
in the thing, see some heads pop up, and then go back, and they would kind of get you ready for the next round. So they did a good job of that.
Yeah, I think the coverage teams did a good job too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the hugest fan of, I think, most of the people that are in the current coverage roster.
I'd say 50%.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd go that high. Like, Riley's fine and Marshall's great, obviously, but like basically anybody else I could do without.
I like Paul.
Oh yeah,
I
Paul's
think
fine.
I think Marshall and Paul are a good booth.
Yeah,
Riley has grown on me. He used to
yeah,
grate on my nerves, but he has grown on me over time. I really don't like Corey and Aloy that much.
yeah. Me neither.
Um, like there's
Something about
there's been
Maria rubs me the wrong way.
yeah, and like Maddie DeVuti, kind of whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
But
maybe we're just spoiled from like our time in competitive Magic. Like, the coverage teams were absolutely phenomenal.
yeah, but yeah, it's weird. They shrunk.
Yeah,
Like it's like we're down to like we've got like 7 people that we allow to do this.
yeah.
Um, and Cedric now works on the inside, so we
Yeah.
can't let him out. Um, so
Yeah, I don't
the
think anybody really beats Cedric and P Sully.
yeah, but P Sully is not ready for Wizards prime time.
Oh no. Oh no.
They can't.
Not rated for general consumption, I don't think.
No, like the first time we'd be like, this card's a stupid design. Who would do this?
Yeah.
Just ruins the game.
Yeah. And like, I mean, LSV's an all-time GOAT also. Not that he hasn't or wouldn't do Wizards coverage, but it's not the same as it used to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a little indisposed right now.
Yeah. Well, even he's not the same as he used to be, though.
No, I mean, he's in his 40s now.
Right.
We're not as cool as we were when we were in our 30s.
That is true. We're cooler.
We're cool. Yeah, exactly. I sound like I smoked like 45 packs a day.
Yeah. Doing the podcast with Tom
40s.
Waits over here.
Yeah, jeez. All right. So we've got the top 8 was 3 domain overlords.
Mm-hmm. Matt Nast, James Dimitriov, and Christopher Leonard.
Mm-hmm. And then a Gruul Mice by Yu Chen Lu.
Mm-hmm.
Gruul Leyline by Lucas the Cow.
Very similar deck, right?
Gruul Leyline is like all in, so it's Leyline of Resonance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with, like, they both have a similar game plan, though. Like, Leyline is
Yeah.
looking to, like, turbo it out, and Mice can play a little bit more of a longer game, but they're very similar.
Longer. Yeah, like creatures, pump spells, get them
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
But like Gruul Mice has a little bit, like you said, a little bit more staying power.
Yeah.
Than the hero we all needed.
Mm-hmm.
Golgari Graveyard with Zane Faust.
Deck is so sweet.
And then we mentioned Jessica Oculus with Kenta Hanara. And then Mono Red Aggro with Ian Robb.
Also pretty similar to Gruul Mice.
Yeah, so like you had the deck that like had an okay matchup against what's it an okay matchup? Where was Gruul again? Because like I was so like yeah, so like Gruul Mice had a 60% win rate against Overlords. Mono Red had a 67% win rate. And I don't know where a Gruul Leyline is. Gruul Leyline. Yeah, I don't know how that guy got there. Gruul Leyline had a 44% win rate.
Oh.
But there weren't that many people playing it. It had a 46% win rate overall.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was 4 and 5 versus Overlords.
Okay.
So again, not a huge sample, but basically the three of the 5 decks that made it to the top 8 smushed Overlords.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the whole.
That's kind of wild
kind of
for that to happen, and then they're like the finals was Overlord versus Overlord, but half of the top 8 was set up to smash Overlords.
Yeah, like there was. Do we have the? What's it called? Do we have the bracket? Because I don't know what the bracket was. Because I think that like green, like there was. No, I guess they didn't start playing mirrors until the semis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they just all. I'm trying to remember the games. There was a lot of like, if you did the like turn 3, uh, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, turn 4, Zur, gain a bunch of life, or like temporary lockdown, and then do that.
Yeah.
You got there. So this seems like it's happening more, and I don't know if that's because there's less of, and I think this is probably what it is. There's less of the Magic Old Guard at these events than there used to be.
Oh, definitely. There's a ton of fresh faces.
Yeah, but like James Dimitrov, first Pro Tour.
Yep.
Zane Faust, first Pro Tour.
Yep.
I kind of want to say Luchin Q first Pro Tour, but I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a lot, even like last Pro Tour, I felt like there was a lot of like people that it was their first time.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about Zane's deck.
Yeah.
Or not Zane, Zevin.
Yep.
Zevin's deck. So it is a deck where you're just trying to put creatures in your graveyard to make draft uncommons cheap.
So I don't know if you remember or not, but one of my picks for murders was, or it wasn't murders, I'm sorry, it was outlaws, was Hollow Marauder. And we kind of brewed this deck. Obviously, there's definitely some tech in here I wouldn't have thought of, but we kind of brewed this deck when we went over the when we were doing card by card for Outlaws.
So I think I had mentioned I was playing a version of this in Pioneer for a little bit. So basically, it's an up to Beanstalk deck.
Yep.
So you want to play things that trigger Beanstalk but don't cost 5.
Definitely. Like you do with every Beanstalk deck.
Yes. So I played Cenote Scout and Gnawing Vermin as 1-drops that can fill the graveyard.
Yep.
And Molt Tender, the new card from this. And then Souls of the Lost, which they had mentioned in coverage. Zevin said short up the Gruul Mice matchup. They weren't going to play the deck, and then they found this card, and they were like, oh, we can beat Gruul Mice now, and he just was like, I'm on it.
Yeah, this is just a giant roadblock that's bigger than anything they can do. Early.
And then Harvester of Misery, less for the 5/4 body for 5.
More for the removal spell that fills up your graveyard with a relevant card type.
Effectively, its channel ability, though we didn't keyword it for the set.
Right.
Overlord of the Bailmark, another thing that fills your graveyard, and then triggers beans.
Yep.
And becomes big. And then Chitin Gravestalker.
New from the
Cycling 2. It's a 5/4 for 5 and a black. And it costs 1 less for each creature in your graveyard. Hollow Marauder is the 3/2.
Yep.
Costs 1 less
4/2.
for each card. 4/2.
Yep.
One, 6 in a black, but costs 1 less for each creature in your hand. It has value text.
Yep. All of the
And
value
then
text.
And then Huskbuster Swarm, 6/6 Death Touch Menace, 7 in a black, costs 1 less for creatures in your graveyard. And then Overwhelming Remorse is the 5-mana removal spell that costs 1 less for each creature in your graveyard.
Yep.
And then that is it. It is just 6 removal spells and then big creatures.
Yep.
I mean, when your graveyard's on and you've got if you're playing getting a 5/4 for 3 mana, that's fine.
Yep.
Right, and it's not hard to think you could go gnawing vermin and then block something and put it in the graveyard, and now you've got maybe 2 or 3 creatures in your graveyard if you're lucky.
Yep.
And now your whole deck's on and cheap.
Well, especially with beans when they're all Elvish Visionaries also like that.
Yeah.
It's just a pile of value that's hard to deal with. You have to force them to have a removal spell for basically every spell you play.
He was, they do the hey, you made the top 8, you clinched whatever. He was the most relatable I've seen. Because your first Pro Tour is I don't know what to do. And he just sat there for a second. He's I made top 8 of the Pro Tour with a bunch of draft uncommons.
Yep.
What am I?
The good old days.
Doesn't make any sense.
Random archetypes and yeah.
Now he did mention that they realized they made a deck building mistake with their 1-drops. I don't know what 1-drop would have been better.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe hit him up on Blue Sky there.
Yeah. Hey man, what 1-drop would you have played?
Yeah.
Did you see the huge number of Obstinate Balos running around?
I heard people speaking of them pretty frequently, but I don't think I ever saw one.
And Wiltleaf Liege.
Oh yeah.
For a Hopeless Nightmare in the Dimir Pixie decks. So people had Balos and Wiltleaf Lieges.
Yep.
So there's someone playing a blue-white deck, and since they couldn't cast Baloth, they had Wiltleaf Liege in their deck.
Okay. So
they could and at one point they did get to put it into play. They just hard cast it.
Yeah.
For 1 white. So it was funny how Esper Pixie shaped the took 2 sideboard slots of every deck to just be Baloth.
Yeah.
Or pretty much any deck that would that made sense. But if you look at the Overlords deck, Matt Nass had had 3.
Yeah.
I guess it gets to pull double duty. It gains you 4 life in the red matchups. And then James Dimitrov had. Did he not have any? Oh, he had 3. And then our Canadian friend. Oh man, he had 3.
Yeah.
So all the the mid-rangey decks had 3. And then the green-black deck had 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was interesting. Any other fun things? What else did you notice when watching coverage?
I don't know that anything else particularly stood out. Were you setting me up for something and I just swung and missed?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I was.
I mean, just in general, it kind of felt like old Magic a little bit. I got nostalgic a little bit. I don't know if it was because that Overlords deck reminded me a lot of the kind of Magic that I like to play, or if it was just watching coverage again. It seems like in the last few years, whenever I tuned into coverage for basically any event, like nothing grabbed me.
Yeah.
And whether that comes down to whoever was commentating or whether it was the style of Magic being played with, some of the more popular recent decks being basically a pile of fire design cards that I really didn't appreciate very much. I don't know, like I was genuinely interested in this coverage, and I haven't felt that way in a long time.
What was uh I agree that like I enjoyed this coverage more, and it felt more like, I guess you're right, it did feel more like old Magic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know like why. Uh there was it seemed like there was more resource management as opposed to resource deployment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It may have been, it was uh because like you had these like pump spell decks
Mm-hmm.
that like you had to like be very careful and like meter out your threats, or like the mid-rangey control deck where you're like having to like uh get kind of things to line up right, and like
Yeah.
there was more of a fail case for things,
Yeah.
and things were a little more fragile, as opposed to just like you said, like giant enormous like on turn 4 I'm gonna put an attraction into play,
Yeah.
and like, okay, then can you stop that? Or like, how many different ways can Fable the Mirror Breaker win a Pro Tour?
Yeah.
So then you had another link that was like the spicy deck list.
Yeah. Did you want to go through some of those?
We can look.
One deck that I kind of did want to touch on that I thought was pretty cool, even though I guess I don't exactly know how well it did because I only really watched day 3. And I don't know that it picked up anything new. But Javier Dominguez's Golgari Obliterator deck.
I will tell you how it did. But continue talking. I have to find it.
Basically, the engine of the deck, from my understanding, was Phyrexian Obliterator and Bushwhack, where you're just like, my Obliterator is going to fight something and make you sacrifice your entire board.
Stone even. 51.4%.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not the best, but it's not the worst either.
Yeah. This is one of those times where you're like you do know this was a like Saffron Olive deck that he played when Obliterator came out.
Yeah.
Like it, but no, like Javier. This was a Saffron Olive deck. Now, there have been a number of Saffron Olive against the odds decks that have gone on with some tuning to be like
To
very
do great
good
things.
decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just funny that it's just like, this is Saffron Olive deck.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I actually don't see, other than the Verge, I don't see any new cards in this deck.
No.
Which is kind of wild.
Like, I think that's the thing that we're gonna have to get like somewhat used to. Right? Like, unless there's something like, with Standard being as big as it is,
Yeah.
for the next set to be super impactful, it has to be like really pushed because of how big things are.
Yeah.
Right? And that used to be the case for, even like in smaller standards, right? Like there's like the last 2 sets before rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they had to be pretty good
Right.
because standard was so big. Now you have like that extra year,
Yeah.
like it's going to be a little stagnant, where it might be kind of like energy standard, where you're just like moving around removal spells. Like, oh, this is a better removal
Yeah.
spell, or this is a better land.
This is now best in slot.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to like this is a new archetype.
Mm-hmm. Did Ketramos do anything in this tournament? Because I know that was kind of
Um,
a hot card that people were brewing with.
Abza and Ketchamos went 1-3.
So no.
So no. But again, like one player,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of hard to be like, okay, here's our Simic Merfolk deck that went 2-8.
Well, so that's actually what I was just gonna touch on. Is I know you mentioned this deck earlier, and there is one thing that I like that this deck is doing that I hadn't really seen anybody else play with yet, and that's the Exhaust plus Agatha's Soul Cauldron.
Oh yeah, yeah, with a
Yeah.
Mindspring Merfolk.
Um, that's a really cool, seems like powerful enginey interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if like the people that were messing with the what's that card's name? The Goblin Draconaut, like those
Yeah,
exhaust decks. I don't know if any of those decks had played around with Soul Cauldron or not yet.
I've not seen any, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's
because you could like if that's the case, like how does that interaction work? Can you like if you have a Draconaut and you make a dragon, and then you exile one under the Soul Cauldron, it gets another instance of that exhaust ability that you can activate, right?
yeah, yes. Um, so yeah, you can just like you can as long as you put like I think for each one you put under the Soul Cauldron, you get that ability again.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's weird that like they have the Agatha Soul Cauldron, but only one Mindspring Merfolk.
Yeah.
Right, like it seems uh
Yeah, I don't know what else you're doing. I guess it works with Hexcatcher.
uh
I don't know what
like
I don't know why else the Soul Cauldron's there though.
yeah. I mean Flood Pit's Drownder's ability doesn't work
Right.
because you don't have the counter.
Right.
Um yeah, it's a little weird.
Hmm.
Um
And there's not even like another one in the board.
uh Oh, if you control 2 copies of Forensic Researcher, you can one can untap the other, which can be repeated indefinitely.
Oh, okay.
When you have the Deep Root
When you have the
Pilgrimage.
deep root, yeah.
And that's what they have the Soul Cauldron for, is to get 2 of them.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we were looking at like the Mindspring Merfolk, but they were doing the Forensic Researcher Infinite, because
yeah, they were splinter twinning.
I was like, wait, like I know this. I think this does something. Like I've seen this before. This Remy Rudor made a deep run.
Yeah, that's the artifact deck.
Yeah, like it looked pretty good. Now it did run into like I think it was the Selesnya Cage deck.
Yeah.
Where they just kept getting like Haywire Might.
Yeah.
Haywire Might.
That's rough.
And like he had to just fight through all this artifact removal. But like the game that it like did its thing, it looked really good.
Yeah. It seems like a cool deck. I don't know that it's something that I would necessarily play.
Yeah, so like Repurposing Bay, But and then like Legion Extruder.
Mm-hmm.
So your removal spell, Repurposing Bay, gives you a synthesizer.
Yep.
Your chainsaw gives you a synthesizer with Repurposing Bay. So like
Basement Tome,
all
Collector's Vault.
yeah, all like roads lead to
Synthesizer.
synthesizer.
Yeah.
So oh, it had a Radiant Lotus in it?
Mm-hmm.
Go that hard? Yes, it did. Okay. Mardu Monument. Okay. Okay. Okay, now that I look at the list, I'm less excited about it.
Yeah.
But I was like, ooh, but I was like, But I guess like you have ways to just discard cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is something that I was kind of surprised at. There really wasn't much of a cycling presence.
Yeah, not much cycling.
Which
There
must
weren't,
mean that there's not a whole lot there.
At least not in standard.
Yeah.
I stand by my baby enough that I bought the 4 monuments that I didn't have.
Yeah.
Going to our affiliate link and then buying 4.
Okay, well, I guess I didn't scroll down far enough because the Soul Cauldron thing with Exhaust that I was just talking about, there is a whole deck that's built around that.
Oh, yes, the Teamer Exhaust deck.
Yep.
So, I was disappointed in or maybe I should be proud of the Pro Tour players. Because remember how I was like, someone's going to show up at the Pro Tour with like, whatever, Cinder or whatever, Gearhulk and like a bunch of clones?
Mm-hmm.
Did not see it in any of the deck lists.
Nope.
So, they controlled themselves. Oh, here you go. Brad Robinson's Bant Gearhulk. This deck was sweet.
Oh, that's the one you were talking about with the Mockingbird?
Yeah, 3 Mockingbirds. I don't know if I like the Regal Bunnycorn should have been a thing, but like Gearhulk, get Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Was top notch.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, if you're on the Warden and the Inner Sky plan where you want a bunch of artifacts to tap to make it big, and you're on the Novus Inspector and Spyglass Siren to make that happen, like the Bunnycorn kind of makes sense. It's just like it's just a Tarmogoyf. The 2-mana big.
And I guess like Sentinel also is pumping out tokens.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, so here is for the listeners, here is a how do you know it's an open deck list tournament? Tell me it's an open deck list tournament without saying it's an open deck list tournament.
Yeah.
1 Spell Pierce in the main.
Must play around it forever.
Must play around it forever.
Yep.
But there's only 1.
Yep.
Right. Could have been another target for Gearhulk.
Yeah.
But he knew that every round his opponent was going to be handed a list.
Yep.
That said there was a Spell Pierce. And every round every time he had a blue man up, his opponent had to think, is this the time?
Yep.
For the entire match.
Yep.
Like, there used to be people that would like do stuff like that and then side it out.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, it has done its job.
It will continue to do its job regardless of whether it's in my main deck or not.
Yeah. If you Spell Pierce someone game 1, you could just cut it game 2 because you knew they were playing around it for the rest of their life.
Yep.
Like, until this round ends, they're not casting any non-creature spell unless they have 2 extra mana.
Oh, they got a second Spell Pierce in the sideboard.
They do. So they at least were willing to, like, cast 2.
Right.
But, like, you remember getting someone, like, in a game and then being like, oh, don't need to have this in here anymore.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So, we got any other fun and excitement here?
Nope, I don't think so. The only other link that I had was all deck lists. I don't think you want to go through all deck lists.
Let's not go through all the deck lists. That seems like too many deck lists.
Especially since you're on your deathbed, your wife's on your deathbed, and you have
And Kevin's apparently in the bath.
An angsty toddler.
An angsty toddler, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, I think we got a show.
We got a show.
So if you got ideas for next week, let us know. Reach out on social media, Facebook, Discord, Twitter, all that jazz.
Yeah, hit us up. Let us know what you think. Still kind of tossing around the idea of brewing a deck as an episode. Hadn't really gotten any feedback out of that yet, but if it's something you guys want to hear about or listen to us do, let us know. Or if you got something else you want us to talk about, feel free to do that too. Like Brian said, links are down below. If you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do it. The first is with our TCG player affiliate link, CasualTryHard.com/TCG. We would appreciate if you did your TCG player shopping using that link, as it supports us and doesn't cost you anything extra to do so. The second way is with our Patreon, patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. You get about another hour of content out of us every week in the form of our unshow, unscripted, unedited, unshow. You also get access to our show notes, so you get a sneak peek about what the episode's going to be about. You also get a reference guide if you want to pull it up while you're listening to the show to see where we are, what we're going to talk about. Patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Chip a couple bucks in, help the show out.
Yeah. So with that, we'll catch you on the internets.
We'll catch you on the internets.